welcome to Inside TW. We're very fortunate today to have the great Johnny McKinstry, who was the previous manager for Sierra Leone. Johnny, if you want to just give us a couple of minutes just on your background of how you went from coaching as a grassroots coach here in Northern Ireland to the manager of Sierra Leone.
Okay, well, I started coaching at quite a young age, sort of 15, 16 years of age. I realised that professional football probably wasn't going to be a career path for me, and got involved in coaching, doing mini soccer centres and that sort of stuff around Northern Ireland and Lisburn, doing stuff with the Irish FA, little bits and pieces with Lisburn Distillery, and just the way many people do their coaching day to day. That took me over then. I went to Newcastle in England to study sports science. Whilst I was there, I worked with Newcastle United doing all their football and the community stuff. Also coached the university team at Northumbria University, as well as a local boys team, Felling Magpies in Gateshead, for a couple of years, for 15, 16-year-olds. From that, it took me out to America, to the New York Red Bulls, where for about 3 seasons I worked with their academy and pre-academy, with their players all ranging from 8 to 15 years. We worked with sort of the top-end players in the New York tri-state area, so some very good, talented players. Got to 2009 and I got an interesting offer from somebody I'd met previously when I was in Ghana one summer, who'd been hired as the consultant to set up Craig Bellamy's football academy in Sierra Leone. And he knew I was interested in coming out and working in Africa at some point in my career, and he thought it was a good fit. So it took us a little bit of time to sort everything out, but ultimately in January 2010 I moved to Sierra Leone to initially take up the role as technical director of the Craig Bellamy Foundation Academy, and ultimately that progressed to becoming the academy manager and running the organisation. And then in 2013 the opportunity came up. The incumbent Sierra Leone coach, a Swedish coach, resigned from the position, and I just sort of looked at it and thought, I think I can have a crack at that. You know, I'd watched the team quite closely over the previous years, going to a lot of the games, and I just sort of thought, yeah, I think I can make that team better. So ultimately, went in, met the people who made the decisions, and they were clearly impressed with what they heard and decided to give me the job. And that's started an interesting venture. And obviously during all that time, doing all my coaching badges and stuff with the Irish FA here, starting off with the mini soccer leaders and junior team managers through to the B licence, the A licence. Also, when I was living in America, did the National Soccer Coaches Association of America's equivalent of the B and A licence, so their advanced national and premier diplomas, and then also did my academy manager's licence with the English FA.
So this is quite interesting because our viewers that we have, from the coaching family on Twitter right through, with so many different backgrounds, they find this very interesting because you started at 16, and you might be asking now, what age are you now?
29.
So this is quite an interesting story. From the age of 16 just starting coaching, did the journey that's taken you from England to America to Africa, I mean, it's quite astonishing what you've achieved in the game in such a short period of time. Newcastle, where you start off finding your feet, I suppose, to speak, with working with the university as well as Newcastle United's foundation programme. At what point was it then when America came up? How did that come about then?
America came up. I'd previously been interested in going out to America, and ultimately I finished up my degree at university, and I got a phone call from Major League Soccer sort of recruitment office, and it was more of the type of a lot of people go out to America for 3 months and coach on the camps and stuff, and they were interested in me coming out to work for Major League Soccer as a regular club trainer in the New York area, and just working with one of the local clubs. And I thought, it's interesting, I've got nothing set up after university, we'll go for it. But then within maybe 48 hours they'd called back again, and because the New York Red Bulls were going to be the closest team, I would have been assigned under their care. Now the Red Bulls had an opening to work with their academy programme directly with them, and so they got in touch and were like, look, we know you've accepted to come and do this, but we'd like to speak to you about maybe working with sort of higher end players with your background in the game. And at that stage, and again, I was going to America anyway. It didn't really worry me who I was going to coach initially, but I sort of thought, well, better level players, I'm happy with that. It's more ingrained with the club. You're actually working with the club itself rather than one of the feeder teams in the region. Yeah. So, that took me out to the USA. It was again, a lot of things, when I've moved into new positions, it all happens very, very quickly, and that's happened time and time again. And when I was going to New York, it was literally a case of, it was maybe the second week of July, somebody called me and left a voicemail on my phone from MLS, and by the start of August, I was in New York. So it was whirlwind. It happened very, very quickly.
Yeah. And maybe just the people watching you, you're working with the elite players here in New York. What sort of age groups were you working with? What was your sort of schedule at the club?
I would have worked with all ages through. With the academy itself and the pre-academy, we started around 8, 9 years old. Our early ages were supplementary training, so the kids still stayed with their club teams, but they would come into us, once or twice a week and get additional training. And they had to go through tryouts and all of those things to be selected, so it wasn't just anybody could attend. It was talent based, but they still remained with their own clubs. The academy itself didn't start a pure academy team until U14 level, which has many benefits doing it that way. You get the access to the players, but you also get to have a wider net, because we would have these training centres, our sort of regional development schools in various locations around the tri-state area, which means we would have maybe had 100 8-year-olds on our books, 100 9-year-olds, 100 10-year-olds, and then when you got to 13, you selected a group of 15 or 20 that you wanted to bring into the academy itself. So it meant you were allowed to have quite a wide net for a 5-year period, say, and then you could tighten it in when you needed to. So it's an interesting approach, because obviously a lot of teams here in the UK, academy teams, will start very young. And maybe in America it's easier to do that wider net because there's not so many other teams competing. In New York at the time, we were the only professional soccer team. Now obviously that's changing with New York City FC about to launch this coming season. So will the academies have to start taking players on full-time younger than 14? Quite possibly, because now there's competition. But at the time we were there, we were able to have that wide net, and we would work with the boys. Obviously the kids were going to school during the day, so we'd be out in the training pitch. You usually do two 2-hour sessions a night with different teams. So you'd work with, say, the under 11s for a couple of hours from 6 to 8, and then from 8 to 10 you might work with the under 14s or something like that.
And maybe then comparing from the level of players that you work with in England. Obviously we know here in Northern Ireland it's part time. It's not a full professional league that we have here. But if you compare maybe what you've seen in England to what you had in New York, what did you find was the main differences or any similarities in the kids?
I think what I found, not just between England and America, but generally all over the world, is that the best players are the best players. The top talent in New York, there's no discernible difference between the top talent in New York and the top talent in Newcastle or the top talent in Sierra Leone. The cream is all of a level. Now, we're not necessarily talking about your Lionel Messis and your Ronaldos who are in the stratosphere of football. And clearly when they were young, they probably were set apart from everybody else in their talent. But across the board, the very best players, are very good. Like in New York, a number of the players that we were working with at the academy have went on to represent the USA at under 19, under 17, under 21, and in the next coming years, no doubt, we'll see some of the players that I worked with when they were very young will be playing for the US senior national team. So they were very talented players, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, we can see obviously, maybe say soccer is growing even bigger in the States. I was very fortunate to be out in Hobbs in New Mexico doing a league clinic, and we could see that, especially I suppose as the performances from the national team in the last World Cup will probably help ignite even more interest at all levels.
Well, I think it's soccer in the United States is a big sport. People have this belief, this wrong belief, I feel, that it's a small sport in America. Like, it's in the top 10 supported leagues in the world. The average attendance of MLS is pretty much the same as the average attendance of the Championship in England.
Yes.
Now, you wouldn't call the Championship in England a small league.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
America's different. People find it a little bit strange the way they do the draft system and the fact that all the players are centrally registered with the league as opposed to being owned by the clubs. But it's a system that works in the American sort of sporting infrastructure, and it is now most of the teams have soccer-specific stadiums. Like Red Bull, just as I was leaving, had just completed work on a 25,000-seater soccer-specific stadium that would look at home in the Premier League or Championship in the UK. And most of the teams are going that way now, that they have soccer-specific stadiums. They've got very good training facilities. I think Toronto just spent, I think it was $5 million on building a new training facility. Now, you're not a small sport if you're spending $5 million on training pitches.
Yeah, I mean, it's fabulous to see the facilities. And what's actually quite interesting, saying about players that you're going to emerge and see coming now through in the town, there's actually a close to home network that we have here. Hassan Arari, who's now one of our new players at TW Braga, who was flown from New York and is now living here in Northern Ireland with a host family and doing his education and playing for us. This man here, worked with him, that would have been, what, about 4 or 5 years?
Well, it would probably be 5, 6 years ago. So yeah. Hassan would have been around 6 years old when we first met Hassan. We normally wouldn't look at players that young, but we agreed, his father got in touch and we agreed he could come along to a tryout, because at the end of the day it's a tryout. We weren't accepting anybody. He had to come and show. And in our head we probably thought, is a 6-year-old going to be able to compete with 8, 9-year-olds? Probably not. But Hassan, I think, surprised everyone. He did very, very well. And he came into the training program, and yeah, it was good. We worked with him. I would have worked with him maybe for about 12, 18 months before I left New York, and he was part of that program for a number of years. And it's interesting now to come back and see how he's continued that development. Yeah,
it just shows you how small this world, especially the football world, how small it is. So from the busy bustle of the New York, the city that never sleeps, lifestyle, how did that take you into Sierra Leone being your next destination then?
It was a interesting choice to be made. I sort of wrestled with it for a little bit of time, because I was very contented in New York. It's a fantastic city. I was working with excellent players. I was working with an excellent football club. The New York Red Bulls, couldn't have treated me any better, both during my 3 seasons there and also in the way I left. They were an excellent club to work for. I couldn't recommend them more highly. So choosing to leave to Sierra Leone was a big step, because you're going into the unknown a bit. You're giving up what is quite a comfortable lifestyle and quality of life in one of the biggest cities in the world, to somewhere where you knew would be more rough and ready, would be a tougher day-to-day grind. But for me, the decision always comes down to football, and I knew, until you've worked with African players, you can't maybe grasp the work ethic and how much desire there is. Like when I first went to Africa in 2006 for a 6-week period to Ghana, I came back realising that what I thought was 100% that my players were giving me was actually closer to 70%. And it was about how can you increase that work ethic, how can you get closer to 100% out of players. And you don't have to work hard to do that in Africa. In Africa, they'll give it to you because they want it so much, and it's more than just playing the game. They're doing it for the families, they're doing it for the communities, and so it means so much more to the players there, and in West Africa and Sierra Leone especially. So that was the draw. That was it. I knew there was talent. I knew that raw sporting talent was there. I knew the work ethic was there, and if you've got those two things, you've got a good base to build something on. So it was a tough decision to leave New York. It was a risk, but you don't achieve anything unless you take risks. That was sort of why I went, because it was a challenge, and it was something that I felt would be interesting.
And possibly another country that's has its problems in the past, and most recently, which we'll maybe talk a wee bit more about that in a wee minute. But the connection with Craig Bellamy, how did that come about with the academy that he has invested in Sierra Leone?
The connection purely came about through the consultants. So the people who Craig had brought on board to set up the academy, who'd set up other academies in Africa before. I'd had contact with them back in 2006 in Ghana, and we kept in contact. I kept in contact with some of the players who I'd coached in Ghana, and I kept in contact with the people running the organisation. So they ultimately picked up the phone. It was a phone call. Me and Craig at that stage didn't know each other. Although my time at Newcastle did overlap his time at Newcastle, but we were in completely different, areas of the club, so we would never have met. So it was a phone call of somebody who thought, it might be someone I'd be interested in, would be well suited to, and I think it shows the value of making sure you keep, in contact with people, because it's very easy to fall out of contact and out of touch with all the people you meet along the way, but you never know when somebody's going to pick up the phone and offer you an opportunity. So that's really how it came about.
It's quite interesting because these footballers, professional footballers that have all this lifestyle, all this money, sometimes they get picked on negatively in the press. I mean, this is something so positive. I mean, he's invested actually quite a lot of his own personal money, in this project, hasn't he?
Yeah, over the last sort of 5-6 years, Craig's invested north of $2 million of his own money into Sierra Leone, and he does it for no personal gain. He does it purely because back in 2007 he travelled to Sierra Leone, and in his own words, he says being in Sierra Leone makes him want to be a better person, and he looked at that he had, and he was able to take care of his family and his children because he's a big family man, and he still had all this extra, and he was like, well, how can I maybe help children who don't have as much? And he decided to invest in Sierra Leone in a purely charitable way, and it's not just the academy that's home to 30 very good, promising young footballers and students. It's also the 2,500 kids across the entire country who, by playing in the Bellamy Foundation leagues, also have their scholarships paid for to go to school, so they attend school on a regular basis because of the foundation. Then the really talented ones obviously get offered a 5-year scholarship at the academy to study for their international GCSEs, so a higher standard of education than would normally be available to them in the country. They train full time, and we've seen some very good success. We currently have 4 boys on scholarship in the United States. We've got 2 boys on scholarship in the United Kingdom. And this year we should see our first professional player develop from the Craig Bellamy Foundation. And that's going to continue to grow and develop. But like I said, people on the face of it think it's a football thing, and it is a football thing. But education is so very important because it's very, very difficult to become a footballer. It doesn't matter how talented you are, you need a big slice of luck to become a football player at the pro level, and so these kids work very hard in the classrooms as well and make sure they get those opportunities, whether it's in football or outside of it.
Yeah, so it's very exciting hearing what an impact that's making there. Your journey there, taking these lads and giving them, I suppose you can maybe argue, a better way of life, as you said, not just through the football but the education side as well. Maybe you tell us a wee bit about your day-to-day running at the academy, and also then how that extended on, how the opportunity became to become manager of the national team in Sierra Leone.
Well, the academy has grown massively over the last 5 years. When I first went to the academy, we had 11 players, 11 boys, and we had 1 classroom, 1 dormitory, a canteen, stroke kitchen, and there were a few living quarters. It was very basic, to the point now where we have a separate school facility. We obviously have our natural grass pitch. We've got 2 dormitories, we've got staff accommodation for up to, I think it's 18 or 19 staff can live on site, and office buildings, and also it's grown massively over the years. A regular day is pretty full on, especially for the students at the academy, so they would be up, because of the heat in West Africa, we would train first thing in the morning at 7 a.m, so we'd be out on the pitch at 7 until around 8:30, 9 o'clock. The players would then come in, they would have maybe had something light to eat first thing in the morning, and then they'd come in and have their breakfast sort of 9:30, and then would be in school from 10 until 4 o'clock, with obviously a lunch break in the middle, so quite a lot of school during the day. And then depending on what the schedule is, there may be a second training session that day. Normally we would only do 1 football session a day, but there might be something like Pilates, or there might be a football theory class where the boys get to watch their game again and go through it and analyse it, and or there might be fitness, strength and condition, all these things. So, pretty full day for the boys. So that would be from 4 until maybe 5:30. Dinner 6 o'clock. Then they would have homework club from 7 until 8, and then it'd be lights out at 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
so their day was completely filled, and the work ethic that I mentioned earlier really shines through in that. And then, obviously, in terms of staffing at the academy, we had a mixture of both international staff and Sierra Leonean staff, and that accounted for teachers, pure football coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, physiotherapists, performance analysts. and all of these things. So yeah, it was a good operation, and something, we had a lot of very qualified and experienced people working with us. And then, like you mentioned, that led into, I'd been there 3 years, just over 3 years, and that led into the opportunity for the national team. The previous coach resigned suddenly, and there was 3 games left of World Cup qualifying, and I just looked at the team, and I felt I could make it better. I looked at it and I was like, I think I can make this team better. And made 1 or 2 phone calls, and everything moved very quickly, as these things tend to. And was in a preliminary meeting where I sort of gave my ideas to some officials. It was then set up for, in a couple of days' time, for me to meet with the head official, the General Secretary of the FA, and the Minister of Sport for the country. In those 2 days, I analysed both Sierra Leone's most 2 recent games and Tunisia, who will be our next opponent's most recent games, and basically put together a dossier on, 1, how we could develop the national team playing style, and 2, how we would beat Tunisia. And these were all given, and the officials from the FA and the government all were able to go away with this sort of dossier each, and I just explained it to them and said, this is how we can do it. And 2 days later they called back and clearly had liked what they'd heard, and said, we'd like you to coach the team, and we'll sort of, if you can come in and we can sort out whatever the package will be. So it moved quickly.
It's just amazing because, again, I hate to focus in on your age, but it's great to see how the game's evolving, and as more younger coaches getting involved. So here you are, at the age of 27.
Yeah, at the time.
27 as a national manager. I just think it's great. What was the buzz? Here at home, with Northern Ireland, with your family and friends. I suppose a lot of congratulations and.
Yeah, it was. I think people were taken aback by it a little bit. I think other people were more surprised than I was. I don't want it to come across as, arrogant or big-headed or anything, but I knew I was the best man for the job. If they were going to give it to someone living in Sierra Leone, which is what all messages I was hearing in the media was, that they were going to give it to someone based in country, or someone who would move to Sierra Leone and be based in Sierra Leone. Now, there's not a lot of European coaches, even the ones who do work in Africa, who actually live 100% of the time in the country they coach. A lot of them will fly in and out from Europe, but they were clear they wanted someone in country. And when that became a key requirement, if it was based on football, I was confident they would give it to me. I was confident. And so when they called, I was pleased as punch. It was a great honour to be asked to lead a country of over 6 million people. That was a great honour, but it wasn't a big surprise. I honestly felt confident that if they made a football decision, that it wasn't a decision. It was obvious, and thankfully they did make a football decision. It began with a football decision. Unfortunately, it came to an end, and I don't think it was a football decision on when it ended recently, but ultimately it was a great 18 months.
Yeah. And just for people just listening to this amazing story, take us through the preparations that an international manager has for both the qualifying stages for the World Cup, which is huge. The improvement that you brought along this side, was you moved right up the FIFA rankings, I'm right in saying?
Yeah, it's. Coaching a national team is very different from coaching a club team. You really don't have your players for any length of time at all. Clubs under FIFA guidelines they only have to release the players on Monday morning if the game's on the Saturday. So you're talking your first training session is usually on the Tuesday. So you've really got 4 days, 4.5 days with your team. Now, that's not long at all, considering at the top international level you want your players to be fresh. You don't want fatigue setting in. So whilst it might seem that you might want to do like double training sessions, I was always very averse to it. We would only ever do 1 double training session in any week, because you didn't want to tire the players. And if you also think that maybe on a Friday before a Saturday game your training session is going to be quite light, so really you've only got 3 or 4 hours of pure coaching time to really impact those players. So that makes it very difficult. What we did was we used modern technology is fantastic in terms of one, tracking players' progress. There's so many systems available now where I can log onto the internet and watch a game in Greece, and I can type in that I want to watch, player A, and it'll bring me up highlights, clips of his last 5 games or whatever. So modern technology is excellent like that. So a lot of our scouting was done via that to try and find new players, to try and find players who are maybe eligible to play for Sierra Leone. Ones who, a great example was a player, an excellent man, as much as being an excellent player, Michael Lahoud, playing in America for the Philadelphia Union. He left Sierra Leone when he was, I believe, 6 years old and was now 27. Right. Playing, and was actually talked about to represent the USA a number of years earlier, but that hadn't came to anything. And we got in touch with Michael, and after a few conversations, basically he agreed to come and play for the land of his birth. But he'd not been to Sierra Leone for 20 years, and these were the players we were missing out on. So we managed to get a number of players like that into the system. And then it's also about, being able to show players videos, because whilst you maybe can only be on the training pitch for so much time, doesn't mean you can't be in the classroom a little bit. You can't send, everyone's got an iPad now, we couldn't send videos to the players the week ahead of training camp. Often we would, our set pieces would get emailed to the players the week before training camp, under pain of death if these got leaked, so they could see the moving diagrams and stuff, so that when we stepped onto the training pitch, they would have an idea. Yeah. You still might have to explain it, but they'd have an idea of what you were going to do that week in training. So that made things a lot easier. But definitely, it's very difficult in having such limited time to try and impact change. And I think we did. I think in 18 months we've seen a complete overhaul in the playing style of the team, to playing a much more fluid and much more possession-based type of football, an attacking form of football. It wasn't just direct, kick the ball from the centre back to the centre forward as it had previously been. So we've seen that, wholesale change in a playing style, which also coincided with us moving up. When I took the job, we were around 93rd in the world, and when I left the job, we were 50th, which was the highest position the country had ever been in. So we broke their own record, which was excellent. But when I look back on it, I think, we achieved so much, yet we had so little contact with the players. Like 18 months, yeah, but we probably had no more than 20, 25 training sessions to impact that change. And, that's why I look now at whatever the future holds, and I'm not ruling out international jobs. If the right one comes along, absolutely I'd take it. But club management, where you get to be on the pitch every single day, what we did in 18 months, you would do in a month in the club in terms of contact time. So, that'll be the big challenge coming up, hopefully.
It's great. It's great. Okay, and the other amazing thing, Johnny, is going to this international level with how many supporters? 25,000, 30,000 supporters. This must be crazy. All of a sudden you went from your background from the grassroots to working at the elite end of things from the youth side, but now here you stand in the national stadium with 30,000 supporters watching you.
Yeah, that opening game was a big one, Tunisia. It was a must-win, and official figures would say the crowd was around 35,000. I think it was probably more. Like, we joked as we were going into the tech there, you could see people had climbed up the floodlights and were watching the game from high on in the floodlights and stuff, and there must have been so many people without tickets that got able to see the game. So it was 35, 40,000 people in that stadium that day, and it was rocking. It was a must-win game, and it was excellent. One of the things that touched me the most was, obviously, as you can imagine, working at the academy for so long and having ultimately raised these kids, from the age of 10, 12 years old. They'd been growing up into young men with me. All of those guys were in the crowd and stuff, and I managed to sort of pick them out. There was a group of 40 of them with the staff and all in one section of the crowd, and as we came out of the tunnel, I was able to pick them out and stuff, and it meant something to be able to wave up to them, because it was almost, they're like extended family, and to do these sort of things in front of your family. Another great thing was that people, I'm a big believer in loyalty, and and also quality, not just loyalty for loyalty's sake, but my assistant coach, Tom Harris, who works for the Houston Dynamo in America, we'd worked together in New York, and so it was, I'm amazed that I actually had to convince him to come, but he came to act as my assistant coach for the national team, and so, sharing those moments with people you'd grown close to over the years and, knew that they deserved that recognition as well was very special. But, yeah, walking out, I understand now just the buzz. I don't think it'll ever leave me, the noise when that first goal went in, when we took the lead against Tunisia. The only thing comparable would have been when David Healy scored against England, because I was in the crowd at Windsor Park that night, and I remember seeing noise. That's how I would describe it that night at Windsor Park. I seen what noise was. I didn't just hear it, you seen it. And that was the same against Tunisia when that first goal went in. And we dominated the first half. We played them off the park. This great Tunisian team who'd been at World Cups with big players playing in Europe, and we took the lead, deservedly so. And 1-0 at half time, they levelled it up at 1-1. We then took the lead again at 2-1, and unfortunately, a mistake, a lapse of concentration in defence in the dying seconds and stoppage time gave it a 2-2 draw. And but it was an excellent day. It was, the result was not what we wanted, and we were bitterly disappointed because we deserved to win that game. But it was our own fault. We should have been 3 or 4-1 up by the time they equalised. We wasted chances in the second half to put it to bed, and it's all ifs, buts and maybes. Had we held out in that game, we likely would have been in the playoffs for the World Cup against Cameroon instead of Tunisia. So all ifs, buts and maybes. But playing in front of that crowd is excellent. It really does give you a buzz. The other thing I found out was that there's little point shouting on the sidelines. Like, I've never been a shouter. I've always been somebody who believes a coach does his work Monday to Friday, and Saturday he watches it in action and he prepares for half time. Because if any coach really believes, on a Saturday your job is half time and your substitutions. Those are your two jobs. The ability to impact what's happening from the sidelines is minimal, to the point where with a crowd of that size and that noise, you're trying to get a message onto a player who's maybe only 5 metres from you taking a throw in, and he can't hear you. You're screaming at him to get his attention. You need to shout 6 or 7 times, by which time he has to take the throw in. So it shows you that you need to do your work during the week. I think people watch football management, football coaching, and think it's on the Saturday. So little of it's on the Saturday. That's the show that people see, but it's not where the job gets done. Big crowds. I look forward to being able to play in front of those crowds again. I sort of get the feeling that I might have to placate myself with smaller attendances over the next year or two, but no, it's wonderful to play in front of that sort of support base that are so passionate about football.
And 30,000 supporters screaming, it must be one great experience. Interestingly enough, Johnny was very good. He came down to meet our under 10s, under 11s, under 12s and 13s at Braga, and the biggest thing that impressed them most was that Johnny is in FIFA 15 and Football Manager as well. So
little things like that are people tell me about. I didn't know about the FIFA thing until one of my former academy players who's on scholarship in the United States sent me a picture message. Just sort of, he just got the game, the World Cup version of it, and was playing as Sierra Leone, and the team sheet had came up, and it had me listed down on the team sheet and stuff. So these little things you completely miss. But
did you check out your stats? Is the stats as good?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. That's all I've got. It's just in the game. But,
you don't feel in this little break of going out picking up a copy and being manager as Johnny McKinstry in the computer again?
No, it's the same thing. It's like when I was younger at high school, I used to love playing Championship Manager, now Football Manager, and you always used to think, "Oh, this is so realistic." And you're just like, it's not. You're like, it's not realistic at all. In my view, I don't know, maybe it is for other things. The people who run the game, it's a fantastic game. But, for me, I don't, I don't know that I don't remember the part of playing those computer games as a kid that said, "Oh, your players have been denied visas to get into the country. You need to go and speak to some immigration officer to get your star striker into playing a World Cup qualifier and stuff like this." I don't remember that from the game. So the variety of things you've got to deal with in management at international level is massive.
Yeah, and I think, moving from the humour of the computer game, and I think you touched on it there, the realism you don't get. So the one thing you won't get from a computer game is the Ebola incident, which is now coming. It's huge. It's a worldwide. It's a huge problem, and really it was a lockdown for you then in Sierra Leone. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was the worst thing that could have happened to Sierra Leone. A country that had done so well over the last decade to overcome the civil war that had happened in the 90s, and we're starting to see tourism come back to the country, new hotels, new businesses, everything, new roads, everything. In the 5 years I was there, the change in Sierra Leone for the good was fantastic. And then this outbreak happened, and through no fault of anyone in Sierra Leone, someone that came in from another country, and it brought everything to a standstill, it brought everything to a halt, and they will get over it. People have asked me, do I fear for Sierra Leone? The answer is no, because the people are so resilient, and hard working, and they'll overcome it. They're getting a lot of great support from the international community, and they'll overcome it in time. And I hope it won't be too long before the tourism and stuff that was about to take off in a big way picks up again. I know it might take a few years, but I do truly hope, and I'll be going there on holiday. I've got no fears of it. So I'll definitely be returning in the future. On a footballing sense, it completely derailed our qualification hopes for the national team. We'd been drawn in a very difficult group against the Ivory Coast, Cameroon, and the DR Congo, so some big nations in name. But I still believe, we fervently believe we could finish in the top two of that group. Now that would have required knocking Cameroon or Ivory Coast off their perch, but we believe we could do it. We believe we have the talent, and having watched those teams at the World Cup, we've seen those weaknesses there, as I think has been proved by the Ivory Coast results recently. But because of the outbreak, the logical decision, and we have no complaints with the decision, was that we weren't able to play home games. We could not play at home. And that meant getting on the road and playing away from home. Now, anyone who likes their football statistics will know that the home team win 50% of the time. The away team win 20% of the time. Any good bookmaker will tell you that. That's why the odds are the way they are normally. In Africa, it's 65 to 70% home team wins. The away team wins about 5% of the time in Africa. And that's not for anything untoward. That's just the logistics of travelling in Africa, of hotels, of all these things. For your players to be properly rested and in the right physical and mental state to play that game is very difficult to achieve in African international football when you've got to travel across this massive continent. And it just completely derailed us, and it meant it almost became an impossible job to try and qualify them. And we went to the Ivory Coast, we were 1-0 up, could have been 2 up, and a little just lapse of concentration from one of our senior players allowed them in to win 2-1, and we were bitterly disappointed not to get something out of that game, if not all 3 points, and the wheels just started coming off. So the outbreak on a football sense completely derailed our chances. On a human sense, has obviously had massive cost in Sierra Leone, with thousands of people having died of the disease now, and it's something that's going to take a little bit of time to put right, but it's something that will be put right, and I look forward to when that's done. Sierra Leone getting back up and being, the jewel in West Africa, really, because I've been to a number of countries in Africa and in the world, and you'll not find better beaches, you'll not find better seafood, you'll not find friendlier people. And those are all the right ingredients for a wonderful holiday destination. And if you think about the amount of people who travel to somewhere like the Gambia, which is only another 60 minutes from Sierra Leone, 40 minutes even, and the amount of UK and American holidaymakers who go to the Gambia all the time for holiday, yet only another 45, 60 minutes flight on from there is Sierra Leone, and probably much nicer beaches and stuff. So, we'll get past it.
Yeah. I think the tourism board of Sierra Leone will owe Johnny some. So coming to an end, then it happened quite a bizarre way. Really, you would maybe argue, finding that you were going to be replaced at Sierra Leone, that your time was going there, and pretty very disappointing to take because of the strides you had taken. I mean, you put the extra professionalism in place, the inner belief and stuff, which I'm actually feeling sitting next to Johnny here. He's a very confident young man, and what you'd done there in this short period of time, this project, it must have been so frustrating.
Yes, frustrating is a good word for it. Disappointing, frustrating. Let's be honest, when you lose football games, you're always going to be under a little bit of pressure. So we lost our opening 2 games of the group. However, I thought we played well, given the circumstances. We'd done, I'm not going to say as best as we could, because I thought we could have got more out of that Ivory Coast game. I think DR Congo away, where we lost 2-0, it took us 2 days to get to the DR Congo. The boys were so fatigued. Like, my half-time team talk revolved around the simple things of passing the ball 10 yards to your teammate, and this is people who are playing in Serie A and MLS and the Championship in England and stuff. You're talking to about passing the ball 10 yards, but that's what fatigue does to you. It means the very basics start to break down, and so it was almost impossible to get the result we needed from that game. Now, we came back, and so you're under a little bit of pressure probably. I never sort of felt that I didn't see it coming. I was in the FA on the Wednesday. I was in the ministry because I had to leave in some expenses, and I'd spoken to both parties about preparation for the Cameroon game, which was only 4 weeks away. Like, right, we need to start preparing, doing these things. And 2 hours later, I got an email from one of the people who I'd had these conversations with, and clearly the letter that had been scanned in, the reading of it makes it sound as though the meeting to decide this had happened the day before. And so, it's their decision. That's the way football works. We've only seen in the Premier League in the last few days, managers leaving, and people will agree or disagree for the reasons around, but chairmen and owners and administrators get to make the decisions for whatever reasons they see fit, football or not football. And but I thought it would have been right, given that I was in their office, to say, Johnny, come and have a sit. We want to have a chat with you, and finish it that way. Yeah. Now, for me, that frustrated me, it disappointed me, and I actually swung the car around and went straight back to the FA and the ministry. They probably thought I was coming in for an argument, but not at all. It was to go and shake hands and say, best of luck. I hope you find what you're looking for. If this wasn't what you're looking for, if new records and winning form and a young team is not what you're looking for, well, then I'm not the person for the job, because this is the way I do it. And they went their way, and it's hard to say it was the right decision, because from being 50th in the world in September to being in the 90s now, only 3 months later, and likely to drop out of the top 100. And, in the 4 games since that happened, they've conceded more goals than we did in the 8 games that I was in charge for. But the past is the past, and we're going.
Yeah. I mean, so much to do with. I mean, it's a really intriguing story that we've enjoyed here, Johnny. But what's the future for Johnny McKinstry then?
It's hard to know. A new challenge. I'm hungry for a new challenge. Like, I'm enjoying the break at the moment, because the way I am, I'm 100% all of the time. Even if I've had holidays in the past, I don't turn my phone off. I'm still answering the emails. I'm still speaking to players. I'm still, I remember last year I went to Houston in America for a week's holiday, but I was still on the phone trying to convince players to come and play for Sierra Leone whilst I was on holiday. That's just the way I am. I don't switch off from the game. And whereas now, because I don't have anything to think about, having departed Sierra Leone, I'm able to properly recharge now, which is excellent. I head off to Asia very soon to speak with a number of clubs and associations. I've also had contact out in North America, in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East. So I don't know yet. The one thing is, there's a few criteria. I want somewhere where there's a possibility for success, because some jobs, not many, but some jobs you're losing from the day you walk in the door, that you simply can't win. There are some jobs like that, and I wouldn't be interested in that. I want there to be a chance to win, to be successful with the right amount of hard work and innovation put in. I'm eager to experience a new culture again. One of the things I love is throwing myself into a culture. I did it in Sierra Leone. You know, I learnt the language, and I would love to do that again, whether that's in Asia or the Middle East or wherever. And yeah, just a challenge. You know, it's what keeps you, you know, springing yourself in a spring in your step when you've got to go and, you know, create something.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know yet. I'm in no rush. I've put myself in a position where I can take the job I want to take rather than the job I need to take. Mm-hmm. And so we'll weigh up all the options. And
okay, we can't thank Johnny enough for his time today. And just beneath us now, we're going to put Johnny's Twitter name beneath us, and maybe sometime we'll have a Google Hangout, or possibly even you can tweet any questions you might have to Johnny. You can see that his story is amazing because it's went right from the grassroots, at the age of 16, starting his qualifications, right up to the top level of the game, managing Sierra Leone, managing international side, and taking right up FIFA rankings and stuff. So I mean, it's been so intriguing, and I've got so much. I can feel his passion just sitting here next to him, and I'm sure his next role, he's going to make some big improvements, whatever that may well be. But for now, we have to thank Johnny for his time. And any questions you have at all, send them in now, and I'm going to try and organise a day and a time that we can have a thing again. But for now, thanks very much, Johnny.
thanks.